On a cold autumn night, Ethan drove along a deserted road that cut through the heart of a forgotten forest. The trees, gnarled and ancient, towered over the narrow path like skeletal hands reaching for the sky. The further he drove, the thicker the fog grew, until the world outside the car became a gray blur. Ethan wasn't lost. He knew this road well. But tonight, something was different. The silence was oppressive, and even the sound of the engine seemed muffled, as if it had been swallowed by the fog. He turned up the radio to break the tension, but heard only static. Sighing, he turned it off, letting the silence take over again. Suddenly, the headlights illuminated a figure on the side of the road. A woman, dressed in old, tattered clothes. She was standing with her back to him. Ethan slowed down, worried that she might be in trouble. When he pulled up beside her, she slowly turned her head to look at him, her eyes empty, emotionless. "Are you okay? Do you need a ride?" Ethan asked, trying to keep his voice steady. The woman said nothing, her gaze boring into him. Her lips moved, forming words he couldn't hear. The silence was suffocating. Ethan hesitated but felt compelled to help. Against his instincts, he unlocked the passenger door.
The woman got into the car without a word, her presence chilling the air inside the vehicle. Ethan tried to start a conversation, but she remained silent, her eyes fixed on the road ahead. The fog thickened, and the road seemed to stretch on forever, twisting and turning in ways Ethan couldn't remember. Finally, he couldn't stand the silence any longer. "Where are you going?" he asked, his voice shaking slightly. The woman turned to him, her face now pale and hollow, her eyes sunken into her skull. "Home," she whispered, her voice echoing in the stillness. A shiver ran down Ethan's spine. He looked down at her hands, long bony fingers holding a small, worn medallion. Something about the object seemed familiar, but he couldn't place it. "Home," he repeated, almost in a whisper. "Yes," she replied, her voice growing even colder. "Take me home." Ethan nodded, but the road ahead had changed. The trees were thicker, their branches closing in on the car like a cage. He kept driving, the path deepening into the forest. The fog was so thick he could barely see beyond the hood of the car, but the woman seemed to know the way. Without warning, the road ended at the gates of an old, decaying mansion. It was in ruins, eaten away by time and neglect. The woman unbuckled her seatbelt and got out of the car. Ethan followed her, drawn by an unseen force. "Is this your home?" Ethan asked, his voice shaking with fear. The woman nodded, her back still to him. She began walking toward the mansion, her movement slow and deliberate. Ethan watched her pass through the gates, the iron bars creaking as they swung open as if welcoming her back. He hesitated, but curiosity got the better of him. As he stepped through the gates, the fog suddenly cleared, revealing the mansion in all its eerie glory. The woman was gone. Ethan approached the front door, which was slightly open. He pushed it open and stepped inside. The air was heavy with dust and decay, what had once been a grand interior now crumbling. His footsteps echoed in the vast emptiness. At the end of a long hallway, he saw a faint light. Drawn by it, he walked toward the glow, his heart pounding in his chest. The light led him to a room at the end of the hallway. The door creaked as he pushed it open. Inside, the room was furnished as if time had stood still. A large, ornate bed occupied the center, and next to the window was a dressing table with a cracked mirror. On the dressing table was the same locket the woman had been holding, now open, revealing a faded photograph. Ethan took the locket and gasped. The photograph was of the woman, young and beautiful, standing next to a man who looked eerily like him. Suddenly, the mirror began to fog up, and words appeared, scrawled in the condensation. "Welcome back, Ethan." The air grew chilly, and the shadows in the room seemed to come to life, twisting and turning around him. Panic gripped Ethan as he tried to flee, but the door slammed shut, locking him inside. The light flickered, and Ethan turned to the mirror. The woman's reflection stared back at him, her eyes empty and filled with sadness. "You left me," she whispered, her voice filled with pain now. "But now you'll never leave." Ethan's scream echoed through the mansion as the shadows enveloped him, pulling him into the darkness. The locket fell from his hand, landing softly on the floor. The fog returned, swallowing the mansion whole, and the road outside disappeared, leaving only an endless stretch of forest. Ethan was never seen again. The mansion, hidden in the heart of the forest, stood like a silent sentinel, waiting for the next lost soul to venture down its cursed path.